fire? Most, but certainly not all. And how many witnessed it from afar? Just a few. Yeah, a couple people mentioned that they'd been away during the fire. Well, what I've done this evening is pull together some slides to share for those who weren't here or who would just like to take a walk down memory lane, to share a few of the images and experiences of the Soberanes fire just a year ago. But I really would like to focus our time together this evening in sharing with you what the Conservancy has seen since the fire in terms of the recovery and some of the opportunities we've had to work with landowners and with preserve staff and neighbors to do some restoration work. And then also talk a little bit about looking forward and how Forrest Arthur with the Community Services District and his team is working with me and our team, along with Karen and a number of her team members, to really make sure that we've learned what we can from this fire, that we're strengthening what is already a really terrific program here for fire safety, and that we bring all of you into it, because this is really a community effort and something that we enjoy working with you on, in each lot being a little bit different. So I remember taking this picture very early on in the fire, it might have been day 3 or 4, and everything was so beautiful. It was one of those just stunningly clear and calm and quiet days, except for the fire, which was creeping towards us step by step, and a big plume of smoke that was drifting away to the south. So just to recap, the Soberanes dashboard, I promise I won't have too many words on my slides, but this is just an opportunity for us to kind of click off the main elements of the fire. The Soberanes fire started in July 22nd. This time last year, it was still burning, believe it or not. It didn't go, wasn't declared contained, 100% contained until the 14th of October. It burned for nearly 3 months, and there were up to 5,000 people working this fire at any given time. And we don't have hard and fast numbers, but in the early days, there were somewhere between 700 and 900 people, firefighters and their support teams right here on the preserve. The preserve provided a critical access and staging area throughout, and many of you who are here saw that firsthand. But some of it also was less visible out in the wildlands. A big part of the Conservancy's job was to help them get the places they needed to be. And a lot of that equipment was actually staged pretty far out into the back 40, as we say. Over 132,000 acres burned, and to contain it, they put in well over 100 miles of dozer lines in previously undisturbed areas. The suppression cost was $236 million. It's a huge number. It's the most expensive fire in United States history. One of the reasons it was so expensive, as it turns out, we have a very, very rugged country. They needed a lot of people and resources to bring. But at the time that this fire was burning, there weren't any large fires burning in the West at the time. We were lucky in that sense. And so we got more than our quote-unquote fair share of resources, so basically sent them all to us. There was unfortunately one fatality on day 3. It was a bulldozer operator at a rollover in Colorado Canyon. And out in Colorado Canyon and Garrapatta Canyon, 57 homes were lost, along with 11 outbuildings. There was some other damage, some archaeological and historical resources, sensitive habitat, and some rural infrastructure. But the federal estimate was that at least $6.8 billion worth of real estate value was saved through the investment of the $236 million. That's the federal government's estimate. So, big picture, this is what the fire ended up looking like. And to orient you, this is CalFire's final map. And the preserve, here's the Carmel Highlands, this is Big Sur. The Arroyo Seco is over here, Jamesburg and Kashawa, the valley, the whole Carmel Valley is up on the northeast. And the preserve is in this area right here. We were as we go through it, I'll show you a little bit, but as the fire was pushing this way, we were the critical line that protected, the preserve provided the critical line that protected the most densely populated parts of Carmel Valley and the Highlands, the southern part of the Highlands. So pretty early on, we knew this was going to be a big fire. Within hours, the smoke plume was pretty impressive, even more impressive than what we saw today. Within hours, the helicopters were flying to get to our lakes, to get to our water supply to try and put it out. On day one, you can see here's the preserve, so we've zoomed in on the northern part of the fire. This shape here outlined in green is the preserve boundaries. Each of these little orange spots here is a homeland, a place where a home can or may be built. Our neighbors, Garland to the east, Joshua Creek Ecological Reserve, Big Sur Land Trust, Palo Corona Regional Park, and then the coast. So you can see that big red splat is where that darn fire started. Back on July 22nd, it was an illegal campfire. There's some evidence in forensics that it actually started the night before, but it was reported that morning. And it had already done a pretty good job of taking hold by the time they got hold of it. For those of you who were here, you'll remember this site. It did not take very long for, as Forrest Arthur likes to call it, for the fire response teams to crash the gate. It was very clear from the beginning that this fire was going to be hard to contain, and they couldn't get to it from the west. The only way they were going to be able to save the highlands and Carmel Valley and our homes here on the preserve was to come through our western flank. And they did. So they brought with them literally dozens of bulldozers. At one point, I think there were 48 bulldozers running on the preserve. But despite their best efforts, that fire just kept rolling. And so this was a view on something like day 5 or day 6 that I remember just standing in the hacienda having come out of one of the emergency meetings and looking up and seeing that and thought, standing a little close. I better get back in my truck and roll out and see what the chiefs have to say. But some of the things you might not have been able to see even if you were here, isn't this a magnificent shot? So this was provided by CalFire. This is on White Rock. This is our ridge. When you heard, if you were here and you heard that, they sent us the biggest bomber they've got in the state of California. And if you were here and heard that rumble in the backcountry, that's what was going on. It was truly astounding how many resources were brought in. Meanwhile, my team and I were out with the maps, and with the CalFire team, we actually split up according to our various capacities and expertise. Dr. Christy and I spent most of our time on or behind the lines with the firefighters, getting access primarily to them, keeping them safe, and helping them find the most efficient routes to get to the places they wanted to go. But we also spent time trying to figure out how to get their bulldozers out to the contingency lines they needed to build. And we're standing on Robinson Canyon here trying to figure out how to get bulldozers and people safely across Robinson Canyon because they were trying to tie into a very large contingency line that reached all the way out to the valley. And we pulled a lot of, many, many very long hours, as did all the preserve staff who were involved in the response. The bulldozing that went on to create those contingency lines created very large open grading areas. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. And the intent there was to prevent, if the fire jumped the contingencies to our west, this is right down the middle of the preserve, the intent there was to prevent it from spreading further north and east, where it would have been even harder to stop. Here again, even well into the fire, this is Williams Canyon entrance between Williams and Van Winkleys. And for every piece of equipment that you see staged there, there was at least that many out on the fire when they were doing their trade. They come in and they drop people off, pull people in. It was really astounding how many people they had out there. The Griffiths will recognize this spot. There was some collateral damage that if I had known on day 1, but I knew by day 5, I think I could have prevented. But there was a very steep learning curve, and obviously protecting homes and people came first. But I learned a lot from, this is the state archaeologist for CalFire. So we're walking through damage to one of the archaeological sites up here near the hacienda, and talking about how to put it back together and how to have better planning in the future so that we can prevent that. So here's a little bit of that red line that you saw, that retardant that you saw, the huge bomber throwing down on these ridge lines. That's what it looks like. It doesn't actually stop the fire. Typically it slows it down, and they hope that it helps them get in front of it. In our cases on these ridge lines, the fire actually burned right through it and just kept going. They had a lot of trouble holding lines on this fire across the board. So when the smoke cleared, literally, and we started going out and looking to see what had happened, this is what the map looked like. If it fits in the red on the side here, it burned, at least portions of it did. It actually burned in patches. But these little red and black tiger stripes are the bulldozer lines that were installed as contingency. So you can see that these are the lines that ultimately held the fire, that they were able to stop it at, but they were already building lines behind those as backup plan. And so a lot of the mysterious damage that you may have gotten if you're out at like Long Ridge or Tucci or some of those areas, or even Chamisaw, it was concerns about if the fire continued to spread up into those areas. So the preserve, I hear it said often that the preserve was lucky, and I will say that there is some truth to that. But the preserve was extremely well prepared for this event. And I really think it's important to put a shout out to the original planning and design and to the staff, particularly Forrest Arthur's team, who worked so closely with our team to make sure that all the fuel management is in place and the roads are clear. The landowners also have a big, you should just reach back and give yourself a pat on the back, because as I'll mention later, CalFire was astonished at the quality and consistency of the fuel management that people were doing around their homes. It made a big difference. So within our community, there were no injuries, no homes lost. Grading or clearing on over 50 open lands. It's just an astounding number that so many people's open lands being the land right around each home, the protected areas around each home site. And that was to protect those homes, but also often just to create access to get through to the next area that they need to be. The community infrastructure damage was minimal. Forrest Arthur's team went through, yes, the Community Services District and the Water Department went through all of the roads and the infrastructure and put together lists and actually submitted claims to the state. But it really ended up being, I think, between the Conservancy's and the Community Services District's damages, it was less than $50,000 of damage, aside from bulldozer work itself. So it's really quite remarkable, and again, a testament to how effectively the preserve had prepared for this. About 1,785 acres burned. We did lose one structure, the Trapper's Cabin. Some of you have heard the story that I had been at the meeting where the Big Sur Land Trust had asked, and with great emotion, that the firefighters try and save the lodge and the bunkhouse and the barn at Middledorf. And I understood that. That's an important and historic location for them, and the firefighters were out wrapping them in reflective material and clearing trees and staging people. But as the line jumped at the top, and I was out trying to help people, help the chiefs figure out where they wanted to go next, one of the chiefs ran over and grabbed me by the shoulder, and all the smoke and chainsaws and helicopters, and they said, "Are there any structures up there?" pointing up trappers. I said, "Yes, there's one. Do you want us to save it?" And I had like 10 seconds, right? I mean, this guy needs to know what he's doing. And I said, don't even try. You sure? Yep. What was your name? Santa Fischer, here's my card. Got it, and he was gone. And I thought, oh man, I wish I had that conversation with somebody before this moment. Now, as it turns out, I think it was a good call. I don't think we could have saved it anyway. I think they would have taken down a lot of the redwoods around it trying, and somebody could have been hurt. But one of the lessons to myself, let's have those conversations before the next fire. Let's decide as a community what we really care about. So the archaeological sites, as I mentioned, 3 sites were impacted. That is my bad. I really wish that I could have prevented that, but we know now that there are ways to work with the CalFire people on planning ahead of time to really reduce the odds of that. We'll never get to 0 in terms of risk, but that was one of the things I regretted about my role in the fire. The ecological damage, while not minimal, it was the least that we could have hoped for, I think. And on the habitat side, we had about 38 miles of new dozer line. Some of it's up to 180 feet wide. If it wasn't so steep, you could land a very large plane on it. And we did have some damage to streams, slopes, and sensitive habitat. So when I saw you last, at the end of last fall, right before the winter rains hit, I told you that we had some immediate priorities. I was really worried about what was going to happen, and I didn't even know then that we were going to have a Boone and Crockett winter and all the water that we did. So we talked about erosion control and stabilizing those dozer lines, getting the streams put back together, minimizing flooding and slides. Some of you have homes that are very close to some of these steeper cuts that the bulldozers have put in. So we went out and assessed every line, mapped them out. We we brought all of our friends. We had consultants and experts from both government and private people all over this property. Even while the fire was still burning, none of them ever sent us a bill. They were here to help us as a community. And we were able to figure out what the most important areas were to nail down before the winter. CalFire stepped up and helped a lot. The landowners filled in. A lot of you jumped up and got people out right away. The insurance carriers were very responsive, and I was worried about how that response might look like, but so far I haven't heard that it was anything other than positive. And I told you that we were going to be looking at weeds and habitat, but that it was probably going to take years to get a hold of that. So looking back at this now, I can tell you that yeah, that was all pretty much correct. And we were able to do what we needed to do. So we've spent a busy year of repairing a lot of that damage. In the burned areas, we've done a bunch of monitoring, we've done a lot of improvements. We've had landowners come out and help us with stream restoration projects and water bars, a lot of straw on the ground, a lot of the straw wattles protecting from erosion near special sites. For the archaeological sites, the CalFire did the remediation that they could, and they sent us funds to hire a university to come and do research, and I'll be able at a future date to tell you what they found. It's really cool. The dozer lines, as I said, there were 3 preserve events. We have received a grant for $65,000, actually from Fish and Wildlife Service. We always like to beat on them for slowing things down, but they actually gave us $65,000 to help remediate the dozer lines around sensitive habitat. Again, many of you have and continue to do open lands repairs. And the Trappers Trail, the link started to go out, and Forrest and David Simpson and the CSD team jumped right on that, and we were able to do an emergency repair there. So we've also been doing a lot of re-preparing in addition to our repair. And we're snuggling up with Smokey the Bear quite a bit. So we've gone to trainings. As you can see, I've sent two of the staff members to actually become wildland certified so that they can be more helpful to the firefighters. I can break my own rules and go back with the firefighters behind the line without that training, but I wouldn't want to send my team members in the same way. So, but I want to actually lead off by saying Forest and the Community Services District Board really stepped up, and right out of the gate they took the lead to update the emergency operations plan. That was a one preserve effort. Karen Baxter, who's here with us tonight, stepped up and really was a big part of that. They've already completed that emergency operations plan. It's terrific. It's really a one preserve plan, a lot of clarity, very actionable, right down to the texts and who's got what roles, and when the emergency hits, which direction do you go, the whole thing. So we've already done a drill. We've got more scheduled, and that plan has been adopted by the County Office of Emergency Services. So, I'm just actually going to put this down and give a hand to, because I see Mark Boitano back there. This is for your team. The Conservancy is taking the lead with the fire agencies to update our fuel management standards. These are the preserve-wide fuel management standards. They're already considered a model for the state. In fact, if we showed it outside the state, I think it'd be a model even beyond that. But there's always room to learn and improve, so we're going back through that. CalFire and the Regional Fire District have been wonderful in helping. They wanted to finish their after-action reviews and kind of get their collective thoughts on what they learned together before they really sat down with us. So this will be something we will finish. Forrest and I have already gone through it with one of our fuel management experts, but we will be working with the districts and the state and local district to finish that up over the winter. We're going to continue to work with the landowners and open lands on your fuel management standards and your lot-specific management plans. And we're also working together to figure out how to retain the effective fuel breaks that were made. Some of those bulldozer lines are actually quite useful. Retain those either as trails or fuel breaks or both. Quite a few of them actually are ready to go back to bed though. We're going to do that as well. And we're not making those decisions unilaterally. We're working with the regional fire and state agencies to decide which of those fuel breaks and dozer lines are worth maintaining. So we've got all new resource and access maps. And this is something that Karen Baxter's team has done. Julie Salvilara, I think, took the lead. She's nodding, yeah, on putting together. One of the things we noticed was that communications and navigation on the preserve are very, very difficult in anything like this. We'll talk a little more about that. But the first thing that, one of the very first things that got done was Forrest and Julie and my team all sat down and figured out what needs to be on this map and how we're going to do it. Julie took the lead and got that done. And now those maps are not only the maps that we have that have every fire hydrant and every access point noted, etc., but it's also digital, and the fire crews have them. They have them on their phones. So we would hope that that will make a dramatic difference next time. We're also expanding the grazing and the mowing along Rancho San Carlos. So some of you may have noticed the little white fencing along the edge of the road there. It's the first time the cattle have come out along the Rancho San Carlos corridor. Despite the fact that we had the fire there on the western edge, we are still vulnerable from fire in that direction. There's still a lot of fuel, and a lot of the trees that were killed but didn't burn are now falling out in the forest. And so the firefighters noticed immediately, and in our after-action debriefings, they were very laudatory of both the mowing and the cattle grazing, particularly how we could get the cattle out further into the field and really bring the fuel loads down, grasslands and brush. So we're going to continue to do that. So what we learned, again, the preserve is well designed and well prepared, and I hope that you feel really proud of yourselves and your community for this. We repeatedly heard from CalFire and Regional Fire that our community was the best prepared that they'd seen, that they'd had an opportunity to engage. Some of that was by design. There's a hydrant in front of every house. That's pretty cool. There are hydrants in front of houses that aren't built yet, so they had absolutely fantastic access to water. And most importantly, the water system performed flawlessly. If you think about it, this is an independent water system. It's a series of tanks and lakes with ponds, but mostly it's the tank system. It received one heck of a test, and Mark and his team can tell you that Leaf and the water team, they monitored that water flow, and they monitored the system 24/7 for the entire time that CalFire was here. It was grueling, and they were on it. They never lost any pressure. The water system behaved and just performed flawlessly, despite the fact that now and then I'd be up in the back with the chiefs and see a hose that I knew was coming, through half a mile of hose from one of our hydrants, just flowing. They would put the running hoses down, especially in creeks, because they figured it wouldn't hurt anything. And I would regularly have to go tell them, excuse me, this is a finite water supply. We're not hooked into a municipal system up here. Oh, sorry about that. Hey, let somebody down there, half a mile, turn that thing off. So, we learned a lot. We learned a lot about what kind of information we would expect them to have that they don't, and how to get it to them. So the roads and the roadside trees were undamaged. That tells us that the way we're trimming the trees, that balance we try and find between clear passage for big trucks and the closed canopy over our roads for our, kind of our unique character and aesthetics, it's working. And the firefighters did not have a freak out about that at all. In fact, we got lots of accolades on that. So CalFire, again, very happy with it. We were well coordinated, I would say, and I'm not going to tell you it was perfect. It wasn't. There were days when I couldn't find Forrest and you couldn't find me. Maybe not days, but long hours. And this was a rough shakedown. It was a big fire. It moved fast. There were more stuff happening than we'd ever even contemplated could happen on one property. And so we really had to come up to speed quickly. But the things that never broke down were the respect, the commitment to each other, the communications to the extent that we had them. We've got an internal radio system that turned out to be just a lifesaver, that we were able to use our internal radio, the Preserve radio system. That worked very well. And I'd say by day 5 or 6, we were really humming as a team. And before then, we were largely working just fine. We were doing a lot of ad-libbing and a lot of independent problem solving. The damage to the preserve was largely averted as a result of that. And many of you who were here were also really helpful. I got a lot of information from people, from members, calling and said, I don't know if you're aware of blank. And that was extremely helpful. I don't know if you're aware they're offloading 5 bulldozers, but they don't seem to know which direction to go. Those calls were really helpful. So if that happens again, please feel free. If I can't take the call, I won't take the call. But I appreciate a text message. 5 new dozers at 14 San Clemente. However you want to let me know, that's just fine. So lots of notes from the next fire. I just picked a few out. Forrest and his team and my team, and pretty much the entire Preserve team has been thinking through this and noodling through it. But really important things to keep top of mind. The Preserve is and will continue to be a critical defense asset for firefighting. So we can expect, even if a fire isn't directly threatening us in the future, that these assets might need to come through the Preserve gates to get to where they need to go. And they will be using our ponds and potentially relying on us for some comfort and care and what they call drop points, big places where they leave a lot of stuff. And we're working now with CalFire and the Regional Fire District to figure out where those places are and how to get them accessed quickly and make sure that it's on all their maps. There are communications and navigation challenges out here, and I'm not going to tell you it's going to be perfect next time, because it won't. It's new people every time. It's really hard even when you've got a map in your hand, making sure that the next crew coming on gets it is hard. About half the rotation here was a 24-hour rotation where people come in, spend 24 hours ago. The other half of the rotation was 12 hours. And that created a disconnect within the firefighting teams that I probably spent 30% of my time during this fire trying to resolve, to make sure that the last people who really knew what they were doing got that information over to the next set before we got there. So, big take home for me is the preparation as partnerships. It was terrific that Forest and the whole Community Services District side had great relationships with Regional Fire District, and our team had great relationships with CalFire. Neither of us realized that CalFire and the Regional Fire District don't talk to each other. They just don't. And so Forrest and I were frequently the bridge I was holding Forrest's hand and he's talking to Regional Fire and I'm talking to CalFire, and we were that bridge of information. So making sure that we keep those linkages. This is a picture of the CalFire map with all of our sensitive habitat and the archaeological material on it. So every fire chief had our stuff on their map. So that, as soon as we did that, the damaged archaeological sites and sensitive habitat pretty much stopped. As long as we were there to remind them to look at the map. Community members are a critical part of that partnership. These are the 3 volunteer programs that we had this spring. Planting trees along San Jose Creek. Out at Long Ridge doing dozer line repair, and then up in the coastal prairie area along Rancho San Carlos, French broom. We had a terrific time, actually. Got a lot of important work done, and the Conservancy team has been following up. Preserve staff and our neighbors. Here's a Big Sur Land Trust. We were out at Middledorf, somewhere in the middle of everything. And that's a fish and game guy who came out. Department of, now they call it DFW, Department of Fish and Game. Another colleague of mine had called up and said, hey, we've got a lot of fish, we've got a lot of dozers in the creeks. Come help me figure this out. And left the regulatory hat at home and came out as a biologist and was terrific. It was just amazing. So today, we are monitoring the fire recovery in the forest areas and the sensitive habitats. We're continuing to restore and enhance habitat where we can. Native grasslands and our scenic corridors are real priorities for us. Figuring out those fuel breaks in the trails. We're responding to concerns where they come up. Please keep it coming. If you see a problem out there, let us know. And we're going out to see what we see. So this will be a few of the pretty shots. We're seeing some remarkable beauty out there. The forested areas are recovering really well. This was several months ago, of course, but this is one of the burned areas. Fire has a tendency to bring out the best in wildflowers, and this year was a little glimpse of that. I think this next year might be even better. As you can see, these are, or hopefully you can see, these are this is a burned area, so these redwood trees were merrily burning a year ago, and they're greening up nicely. A lot of even the smaller trees survived. Who knew? Good to see, though. One of the most exciting things I've noticed lately is I've been out because of Williams Canyon, we're going to talk about the trail in a minute, but I've discovered that my iPhone 7, I can just shove it underwater and just stick it around in places and see what's under there. So I took this picture with my iPhone. Wow. And I hope you can see it, but it's a baby steelhead trout right there in about 7 inches of water. So the stream, this is in the burn area. This is deep in the burn area. I mean, these guys just should have been cooked, and they have done just wonderfully. So can't explain that. Next time, there's one. But if there is one my runs out, I'm going to drop thermometers in the creek and find out what's going on with the water. Because I can't explain why there's so much life in our creeks and the bird areas. So the Ranch Club, and I want to put a shout out to the Trail Committee, has jumped right on the opportunity both to assess and repair damage to the trails, but also take advantage of opportunities to use some of these new dozer lines to create linkages. And there's some really exciting stuff coming up. You guys are going to like it. There's some really nice connection between Williams and Trappers potentially that we might be able to pull together. A little more functionality along Rancho San Carlos Trail. So I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder, but I like where you guys are going, so keep up the great work on that. Several repairs are already complete, and Williams Canyon has been the one that's been our priority, and I got news for you on that one in a minute too. So this is Maritime Chaparral on the Quarry Trail. On the left is what it looked like right after the dozers pulled out. You can still see the dozer tracks in the dirt. And this is a really sensitive habitat type. It really broke our hearts to see so much damage. It's up along between Pueblo de las Palomas and Cantera Run. It's that big wide trail that runs like along the spine of the preserve. But this is what it looks like today. Said Brant out. Well, Brant, I need a new picture. So he ran out and got me this picture. And you can see that mostly native vegetation is coming in where this big room area was. This kind of scraped off area here is starting to revegetate. We're really going to have to stay on it for weeds. But some of the manzanitas that they scraped off going through this really rare habitat type are unique to this region. And some of them were probably something like 500 years old. We weren't sure how well the burls would handle getting scalped like that, but quite a few of them are coming back. So we're pretty excited about that. Here's another area on the kind of Cantera Run side. And this one's a little more troubling. So you can see it was just pretty much hammered back a year ago. And some of what's coming in is good stuff, and some of the manzanita is coming back, but a lot of this is weedy stuff. So we're really going to have to keep an eye on that because we don't need to see. Here's the Pueblo de las Palomas neighborhood back here. They're used to looking out over fantastic maritime chaparral, not a weed fest. So there are some concerns that we have that are ongoing. It's very interesting. Some of the dozer lines are coming apart quite badly, in people's open lands in particular. And some of them in the same neighborhood, same kind of damage, relatively similar slope, all the same soils, are, pretty good so far. We're seeing a little bit of slumping, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. But there's still quite a bit to do out in the grasslands in particular. The erosion often comes first, but behind it will come the weeds. And I know a lot of you have seen a lot of weeds this year. So we are partners in recovery out there. I just want to emphasize that the landowners, you guys, are taking a lot of the leadership. Oops, maybe a sneak preview. And we really appreciate the hard work that you're putting in. We're here to help. And if you do think you need to get out in your open lands with a bulldozer or some other thing festive like that, please call us first. It's really good for us to work together as a team in the open lands. All right, so how many of you have seen this spot? Has anybody snuck up there past the closed trail? Yeah, own it. So this is, if you haven't been out there lately, this was until a couple of days ago what it looked like on the road up to Middledorf on Williams. So one of our best trails runs through the redwoods. I mean, just exquisite, orchids and ferns. And if you haven't been there, you got to go. But as you can see from my intern, Avery, standing there, we had some logs come down that blocked the creek over the winter, and the stream clogged up behind her, just rolled over and just tore out the road. And the road was completely gone. So here I am standing on the edge of the road here. That was the road. The creek, about half the creek was still running down its old pathway, and then it had created a new channel. And over the course of the winter, that got even worse. So there's been a lot of concern about what we were going to do about that, and what the agencies would let us do, and what it was going to cost, and whose job it was. Not so much about the cost. We're going to get it done. But the Big Sur Land Trust has an easement. The Conservancy owns the land. The CSD's got the gear. It was clearly going to be a partnership to get this done. So just in the last few days, we finally got all our boxes checked, got everything going. You can actually see, here's the log that came down, the redwood tree that blocked the stream. This is the old stream channel. And what we decided to do was to do a combination of filling this and bumping the creek back over, but also moving the road a little farther away from the creek and raising it up. So, because otherwise this was probably going to happen again. There's a lot of wood, burned merrily up back in Middledorf. A lot more wood is going to be coming through, so we're trying to come up with a design that was more durable. So with the full blessing of Fish and Game and the county and every other agency on the face of this plant, we went in there, and David Simpson, this is yesterday, went in. We've got a Big Sur Land Trust, maybe it was yesterday, very recently. They notched this log with a big saw. I could spend a whole talk just on what we did here, but they notched this log, put the creek here, got it off the road, My job was to pull the fish out of the road. Believe it or not, there were fish in the road. And so this is me, for full disclosure, that's my husband who works for Trout Unlimited, who's a very durable fisherman. We're here with our aquarium nets. But he and I both have a lot of experience handling and moving trout, and you can see the beautiful fish that we found right there in the road. So the road section that we needed to clear was about 80 to 90 feet long, and we pulled 95 fish out of the road. Yes, that's how many fish are out there. Isn't that amazing? They weren't all this big. That was an exceptional one. Most of them were about that big. They're young of the year, baby steelhead trout. That we'll head back to the ocean. So here's Avery again, back in the day when it was all broken out. And this is what it looked like this afternoon, maybe 2 hours ago, when 3 hours ago, when Brant took a picture for me. So you can see we have silt fencing down here to make sure the side cast doesn't fall into the creek, but the whole creek is back in. Can't quite see it. We need to lift the camera a little higher, but the road is completely back intact. Our aspiration in the next few days is to go in, David Simpson, who if you don't know him, he's Prince Among Men, and you should shake his hand. He actually hand lifted the big fern plants out of the slope before he cut it back so that we can replant them along this face, so that we can green that up and stabilize it, so come this winter we won't have a problem with that dirt getting into my fisheries habitat. So we're really excited. It's been an amazing year, really. And as we look to the future, it's still all going to be about partnerships. This was about 5 days ago. Dr. Christy and I were talking to CalFire about our plans for the future and the opportunities to do some additional prescribed burn and to strengthen our field management plans. And they're very responsive. They are right there with us. They want to be a part of the team. So looking forward, we'll finish up those fuel management standards and get them out to you. We're going to encourage people who haven't updated their lot-specific fuel management plans lately to do it soon, once these new standards are out. That just requires working with a fuel management specialist to take a look at your individual lot. Many of you who've just built your house have just done this, so you won't need to update it, I don't think. But if it's more than 3 or 4 years old, you should seriously consider it. Or if you're in a place where you feel like you're more fire prone, you might want to. We will work with you on that. We're going to continue to be highly cooperative with all of our neighbors in advancing our opportunities to be safe. We are going to reinstitute our prescribed burns. That's what these are the prescribed burn specialists for CalFire right here, and they want us to start burning some of the areas that's safe to do so. They'll have resources here when we do it. The Conservancy will put together a burn plan and we'll bring it to the community, particularly the Community Services District. Mark, I'll be out there with your team, checking to make sure everybody's happy and that there's no hidden infrastructure we need to be aware of. And but I want to own and acknowledge that big smoke plume you saw today, that was a controlled burn, right? We're not planning on anything anywhere near that.
Was it actually under control, or did it get?
I haven't heard otherwise. Usually, if it starts to get sketchy, I'll get a text or something, and I never did. So, but those are our good friends at the Bureau of Land Management. They've got a lot of experience doing prescribed burns. But one of the benefits, and actually one of the ways that whatever happened over there, it benefited us tremendously. Because as these guys were telling us, one of the most important things that the prescribed burns do is they bring all of the players together on our geography, or in this case over there, BLM, and it's reinforcing those relationships between the state agencies and the local district and the local players, and it's making the fire response stronger. It's really important training, especially for their younger firefighters. And so when we do our prescribed burns here, it'll be an opportunity to bring those firefighters onto our property, help them understand who we are and what we do and what we'd like to work with them on. And where the relationship works so well with CalFire for the Conservancy in this fire is largely because of our past prescribed burns and because of our sudden oak death program. And they've been coming here and working with us on other things, but the relationships are there when we got there. So we'll again be expanding the grazing and the mowing, and the next chapter, I'm going to come here a year from now and we talk again, or maybe it'll be this spring, I think we'll be talking about weeds. The weeds out there, as you've noticed, are going to be a challenge. But as a one preserve team, I am confident that we can get in front of it if we are coordinated and we're aggressive about doing it. So, but we can talk about that another day. Today, that's the end of this.